Okay. Good morning. Let's get started. So today we'll see another concept regarding this HTTP service, which was added in from Angular 4.1, which wasn't available before that, which is HTTP interceptors. So interceptors are like middlewares in Express.js. You can think of them like middlewares, even though both the purposes are completely different. But middleware sits in the middle, and a request flows from that middleware or interceptor. We'll not use the term middleware here, rather we'll use interceptor. So it's like interceptor is sitting here, and this is your web server request. So any web service request that you make would flow through this interceptor. So as it is going from the interceptor, it has access to your request, response, and error if there is any error. So entire information can be modified here. So you can modify request, you can modify the response, or you can even modify the error message that is coming from your API. So we'll see how we can implement this. This wasn't available before 4.1. So we used to write a simple class and kind of a wrapper ourselves. But again, Angular team has decided to put it inside Angular. So it is part of framework now. So it's going to be an injectable class. First, create. Okay, let's analyze the problem first. Why do you need interceptor even before discussing uh, these interceptors? Let's talk about the problem. So I'll go to my product service. That's where I'm making web service calls. So if I want to send a header here, the second parameter is header. So I'm going to create a headers object. This is an object, and this will have some properties such as authorization. So remember, we send the token as part of authorization header, something like this. Assume that this is your token. And the second parameter is options object. Inside option, you will have headers property, and you set these headers to these headers, these values. Let me wrap this. Here it is. Okay. Now let's make sure that this is actually making a call with this header. Open developer tools, go to contact page and come back to products. That's when it makes a request. It is making a request. Now, when you closely analyze the request, here it is, authorization. See, this header is added. Okay, this is well and good. And when I go to detail page, and this header would be missing. There is no authorization header. If I want to add it to the detail page, the simple thing is I can copy and paste it on the get by ID, and I need to do it here also. So rather than doing for each and every request adding the headers, because most probably these routes going to be private routes. So how about someone sitting in the middle and adding this header for me? That is going to be centralized logic, and I don't need to worry about taking the token and sending it in each and every request. So that's the problem, and the solution is your interceptors. Let's get rid of this, get rid of this. So we'll go ahead and create one interceptor. Go to shared location or shared folder, uh, and say http.interceptor.ts. First, export a class. I'm giving pretty generic name. If you have any specific name in your project, you can give it. So this is kind of a generic, pretty generic interceptor. So I'm just going with HTTP interceptor without even giving product interceptor or something like that. Okay, this is not injector, it's injectable, and it's part of core. Okay, I made it injectable, and this interceptor will implement the interface HTTP interceptor. Okay, kind of this is messed up because the interface name and the class name is looks like both are same. So let's do one thing. Just try to change it to product interceptor to avoid confusion in future. So I'm changing it to product interceptor. Okay, so I'm implementing this interface, but not the method. This has one method and I'm missing that method. So let's go ahead and implement that method. Here it is. So it has intercept method, and this method would be called whenever you make a web service request. So for every request, this method would be executed, and the return type is going to be HTTP event of any. So let me clean this up. Okay, so there are many red squiggly lines. So let's fix one by one. It is HTTP request from Angular common HTTP library handler, and then observable is from RxJS, and HTTP event is from Angular common HTTP. Okay, so this is what the signature of the method is. It will have a request object and it will have a next object similar to your middleware. So once it modifies the request object, it will say next, which means it actually forwards it. And then it returns an observable. So let's get rid of this. Here, what do you want to do? So for now, I'll just say console.log inside interceptor. Just to make sure that we are actually intercepting the request, I'm going to say that. And then I'll say return next dot handle. Okay, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, okay, console.log and forward it. That's it. Save this. So we are not yet done. This is an injectable. This needs to be added to the module. Go to shade module and add it here somewhere. So I'm going to provide it. I'll say provide HTTP interceptors and use class. Name of the class is product interceptor and there can be multiple. So I'll say multi true. You can have more than one interceptor. And the last one you register in this fashion would be taken priority. So assume that you have another product 2 interceptor. Product 2 interceptor will execute each time. Anyway, save this. If you notice here, we are again doing the same runtime binding or runtime polymorphism. Here, HTTP interceptor is an inbuilt interface. And I'm saying that, okay, whenever the HTTP interceptor is asked, provide my class. And this class has intercept method and that would be executed. The same way we have done for console logger. Whenever somebody asks for console logger, I'm providing file logger. So it looks like there are a couple of errors. Okay, maybe our imports are wrong. Let's go back here. They look good. Okay, let me kill this and try to rerun it. I'm not sure what's wrong. Okay, let me try deleting this. Excuse me. Let me try deleting this. I'm not really sure what's going on. So let's try to start fresh and see if that works. So let's create product interceptor.ts. Okay, looks like it works. Okay, we're back up and running, and let's try creating product interceptor again. So let's export a class interceptor. Now let's implement the HTTP interceptor interface. This is part of Angular common HTTP. This is not updating. Okay. Now it says it didn't implement the intercept method. That is good. I'll import these references. This doesn't seem to run whenever I save my file. Anyway, let's go to shade module and try to register this one. Okay, let's quickly have a look at it. Probably I'm missing the import statements or something like that. Yep, this is what exactly we did. No, in app.module, it's not necessary because if you go to shared module, that's where we are importing it. Here it is. So it has nothing to do with the app module. So let me get rid of this HTTP client module and put it on top. Again, what we did. So this is what we did yesterday. We moved this. Now I want to take it back. Okay, maybe that is what is causing. Okay, in which file you're saying? Get rid of this. Okay, yeah, that's this ID that caused it. So it's, yeah, thanks for that catch. Okay, let's get back and get rid of this HTTP client module. Doesn't make much sense to keep it here. Put it inside here. Okay, looks like we are back on track. So this auto import is causing problems sometimes. As I said, we have to be careful, and that's what it cost us. Okay, now let's get back to our application and see. Go to products, go to console. Say we are seeing this message inside interceptor. So every time it actually goes to that interceptor. Now I'll clean this up. I'll go to here with the detailed one. See, it is inside interceptor. So no matter which web service call you make, it's going to go there. Yep, that's true. It causes issues. So probably, I don't know, there is a bug raised on GitHub for that issue. Maybe it get fixed very soon. Okay, so we were talking about the interceptor and its actually executing this piece of code whenever a web service call is made. That's cool. Now, that doesn't solve my problem. What I want to do is I want to add some headers. So I'll take headers, and specifically I want to add authorization header. And this header, I want to add it to the request. So unfortunately, this request is immutable object. You cannot modify it. So for that, you need to create a new request from this old request, and you need to pass the headers. Okay, let me quickly have a look at it, how to clone this. Probably I close the browser. It's not on top of my mind. Okay, so there was some power cut. Let's come back. Okay, probably this way. I need to use this request.headers.set method. So I'm going to set authorization header. Okay, you're not able. Okay, you're not seeing the screen. Actually, I'm sharing it. Okay, let me stop sharing and restart. Yep. Any luck this time? Or still the same? Okay, let's see. Yeah, let me know if you can see that, so that we can move on. Hmm. Okay, great. So let's get back, and this is where we stopped. So we are actually setting the headers because this request is immutable. You cannot modify that request. So it boils down to this. So actually, a request comes to the interceptor, but interceptor cannot do anything with that request because of its immutability nature. So what it can do is it can copy that request and create a new request and pass the new request to the server. It's just like completely sending a new request altogether, because existing request cannot be modified. So it is cloning the request and setting the new header and then passing it along. Save this. With this change, now every request that you make should have this authorization header. Go to products. I'm interested in a network. Okay, it's still okay. Now we got the data, and we are interested in the request object here. If you notice the request headers, see the authorization header is in place. And if you see the review or the product detail view, it's still making the request. Okay, so I'm on my mobile internet and this is kind of slow. So that's why it seems to take some time to load. Anyway, this request is completed, and now if you notice here we have authorization header. So if you go back and check product service, strictly speaking, we haven't made changes to the individual request product.service, and there is no header added here, but this interceptor is adding that. So this is one real-time use case, setting some header values such as authorization. When you want to add some authorization header, that is one use case. Second use case is you may not want to have this HTTP REST API, all this domain name here. Rather, you just want to have path, and you want to attach the domain name here to the URL, because you'll have access to the request.url, the URL that is made, and the URL of the request, and you can modify that URL. Usually, we used to do this in CDK. We used to have an interceptor, and we just provide the path without domain, just like this. Just say products. Cut this. We'll just say products, and interceptor will add the domain name. What's the advantage of adding the domain name here is because this interceptor is capable of knowing which environment which environment I'm running my application on. It can be dev, stage, production. So based on the environment, the domain name changes. So rather than every time I'm saying HTTPS, REST node, all those things, I'll just put it in a common centralized location, that is interceptor. And every time I would rather not be worried about this thing, the domain name, all those things. Rather, I would be only focusing on this path, like that. So that is another use case. And of course, there can be hundreds of business scenarios, depends, varies from project to project. But these are the two use cases that I can think of. So now let's go ahead and see a real-time this use case. This is just, I'm attaching the header, authorization header, and I'm just sending a request. Doesn't make much sense. Let's try to enable the authentication on our API And without authentication, assume that we will not have access to this products page. So for that, we need login because user has to log in first, get the token, and send the token in the subsequent request. That's what token authentication, and that's what we did in our API. So before again dealing with tokens and all those things, let's design the login page first and try to see how it goes. So I'll go to header component, and somewhere here I would like to have class. Say I would like to have anchor tag, which looks like a button. So button primary. I'll say login. I want this to be a small button. So whenever user makes a request, I want to navigate him to login route. So this login route doesn't exist yet. I'll go ahead and create one. Okay, so just bear with my internet. I don't know what's going on. It's looks slow and it doesn't load anything. Go to console. Maybe we may have some error. Yes, we have. Okay, so silly mistake. Okay, we're back. And when I click on login, nothing happens, or it just navigates me back to home page because this route doesn't exist. Let's create a route for that. So go to app module.ts. I'm sorry, it's app router module.ts. Before that, we need a component for login. So let's use Angular CLI to generate a component. And here, the routing configuration need to be set. So I'll say login, and I'm going to say login component. Get rid of this unnecessary stuff. Save this. Go back to login component. Clean up. Okay, I'm able to see this login component. And now I'll have some controls here. Definitely those controls are going to be username and password. So let's create them. I'll just copy and paste it. Again, paste it second time. Here I want a button. Say login. So the classes that I'm choosing are randomly I'm choosing, and there is no pattern. Just whatever comes to my mind, I'm choosing it. Don't think I have some pattern. There is no such pattern exist here. So it doesn't matter, and design doesn't really matter here. So password, and I want this type to be password because I don't want the characters to show up. Save this. So that's the design of our form. Okay, I have username and password doesn't show up. When I click on login, I should make a web service call. So let's create a login event. Say on login. I'm going to say on login. First thing, I need to grab this. So I'll use ng model. So I'm not going to go and validate all those things we have discussed yesterday, forms and validation. So I'm trying to keep things simple here. So I'll just use two-way binding using ng model without any validations. I'll say user.password. To speed things up, this is enough. And I'm just going to say console.log this dot user, and this dot user needs to be defined here. So I'm even going with any. In real world application, you will have a model user, which will have username, password, and some other structure depending on your project. So to keep things simple, I'm just going with any, and any type should be avoided. Okay, I'll enter some username. Looks like I messed up somewhere. Yeah, that's fine. The reason is it's a null reference exception. So to avoid that, you can just saying, rather than making it undefined, you can say an empty object. So now we have our username and password coming up. So I need a service to make a web service request. So I don't want to use product service because this is completely for different purpose. So I'm going to create a new service. You can use Angular CLI to generate it, or you can create your own service. You'll say ng generate service, that will generate a service. So I'm going to generate a user service here, not generate, write it, say export user service. And definitely this is going to be injectable. And this will have a method login. This will give me user object from my component class. And here I'm going to make a request. So I need HTTP injection to make a web service call. So I'll say HTTP client. Again, this messes up. And I'm going to say this.http.post. I believe I know the URL. So let's, from here, maybe this one, API users. Let's open Postman just to test out this one manually, and then we'll use script. API users slash login, I believe, and the second parameter is the user object. Here it is, and return it. I can be more explicit and say this returns an observable of any. Here it is. Okay, I don't exactly remember the username and password. Let's give it a try. I don't even know whether it is username or email. It's been a while that we have created that API. Let's see. So I don't think I can get, okay, it says cannot post, which means the URL is wrong. API users maybe sign in. Okay, so the URL, we got it right, but it says unauthorized. Okay, this is gonna drive me crazy. Nope. Okay, so let's open RoboMongo and see what's the username and password. Probably this one. Okay, just no need of email. Okay, if that doesn't work, we'll create a new user, not a big deal. So let me make sure I'm using the correct database. So, okay, how safe is it to build an API in JS? It is safe because your code is going to run on the server, not in the client side. So it's as safe as you can think of in any other language. So there is, see, the token authentication, what we have seen is similar in JavaScript, similar in C Sharp and .NET. That's a concept. So if we implement it in JavaScript, you may implement it in Java. So the concept remains same and the security parameters remain same. So you don't need to worry about any security concerns as long as you're working with Node.js. So it is as secure as any other programming language like Java or C Sharp. Let me go to utilities config.js. I'm trying to find out this server. So it's my products DB. I'm connecting to the wrong database. Okay, looks like I have 3 users. abc@gmail.com. Okay, so enough of this. Let's go ahead and create a new user. So I'm not showing you how to register a user. You can take care of that in our Angular application, user registration and all those things. So first go to models and see the structure of the model. So we need username and we need password. And the route is go to user router. So this is our old application that we have worked on. Go to user router and we have sign up route. Here I'm going to say sign up with the same username and password or just okay, internal server error. Come on. Okay, anyway, we have 5 more minutes. I don't think we'll be able to get into Angular and finish this. Let's this get over with so that we can focus tomorrow on route guards and interceptors. I'll go to user controller.js and go to sign up. Okay, I know what the issue is. Let's do a Control Z. Okay, so the mistake that I was doing is I wasn't sending the header, so that's why probably it was throwing internal server error application slash JSON. Probably this should fix the issue. Yes, it did. So email at gmail.com and the password is admin. And when I make a request sign in with the same username and password, okay, I get my token. So this is what I want to achieve from my Angular application. So let's go to user service.ts, and this is sign in. User request or user username password will come as part of the second argument. Save this, and now go back to our user component.ts and make a login component. So first I'll call that user service and then say login by passing the user object, and then I'll subscribe to it. And in the response, I'll get my token. So I'm just logging it at this moment. I'll say console.log error. Okay, so couple of errors. User service needs to be injected. Arrow is missing. And this user service, we have forgotten to add it to the module. Go to shade module and add it here. So it's going to be a simple providers, just say user service. Here it is. Okay, let's give it a try and see how it goes. Okay, let me close this because the application is running. Get rid of this. Both are using the same port. The reason is I have my environmental variable set up, so that's why the API was also using the same port. Now go to products, not products, login, and give some username and password, email at gmail.com and an admin. Okay, it says not found users. That's my bad. A typo is there. Sign in. So we are getting our token back. And this is the token that I should save it somewhere so that I can pass it in each subsequent request. Where to save and all those things, we'll talk about that tomorrow. And if I give a wrong password, I'll get my 401 unauthorized. So even I need to catch this stuff. If there is this response is coming, I should show error message, wrong username or password, one thing. And if I get my response, I should navigate user to some page, one thing. And second thing, I should hold this token. I cannot ask user to enter each and every time a username and password. Each time he wants to request or access some protected route, I cannot ask him to enter username password every time. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. So we'll stop here. Yeah, today there were a lot of hiccups. There was a power cut and things didn't work initially. So hopefully tomorrow it's going to be a different story. Let's meet tomorrow. Let me know if you have any questions, whatever stuff we have seen today.